Hi, everyone. And we are now here with a special guest for How to Be a DM. This is Celeste Conowitch. Hello.
Hello. Ah, it's so good to be here. Thank you so much for
It
inviting
is,
me.
well, I couldn't be doing learning about dungeon mastering without talking to you. You have a wonderful reputation. But a lot of people will know you as a TRPG designer and streamer, and
hmm
also one of the co-hosts for the D&D CommuniTea, which airs
Yes.
it's on Fridays, right?
Yeah,
Right
every
before.
second
Yeah.
Friday of the month. It's a lovely show where we just basically like talk about how wonderful this community is and shout out cool people and just a very fun, positive little tea party show.
It's adorable. I love it.
Yeah,
And
it's yeah.
I was telling you earlier, I'm like, I'm trying to like become more of a tea drinker, so I
Mhm.
might have to pick your brain about tea.
Absolutely. Well, I am learning a lot from that show, and definitely also trying to cultivate my knowledge of teas. So
It's extensive. There is
there is
it's
so
not just
much.
like a little
No,
tiny tea bag. It's
it's
have you
not
had the tea
Lipton or
drops?
green. There's a
Right.
bunch of other
There's
stuff.
there's tons of stuff in between there. Tea
Yeah.
tea drops. Have you had tea drops?
Ooh, no.
I think that I might not be calling them that. I will send you
Gosh.
a link after because my neighbor's a big tea drinker and she got me into these
Oh.
little tea drops that you just drop in the hot
Oh, are those the
water.
ones that
But
like make into like cool flowers and
maybe,
stuff like that? Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
it was like a vanilla lavender flavor, and like I didn't even know that tea could do this. So
It's magic.
anyway, um, in addition to your knowledge about tea,
Mm,
I hear that you're also very skilled in creating interesting NPCs.
that
Would you agree
is
with that
Uh,
statement?
that is definitely something I have been told. For the actual play podcast I run, Venture Maidens, we usually get a lot of feedback that what people really enjoy about our show and our story is the quality of the NPCs and how important they are in the story, and that I feel real and important and are a big part of our show. So I absolutely love making interesting NPCs. I think even, following up with like Noelle, look at like how Shira has evolved. When you have interesting characters, it
Mhm.
just really makes your story real and potent and magical. So definitely one of my favorite things to talk about for
Really?
DMing.
This is so I guess never maybe I haven't really encountered as a player that many NPCs that did something other than, "Hello, our town is in trouble
Here
and
is
we
my
need an
quest. Yes.
adventurer. Can you do this?" And then we don't see them again until we
Right.
come back and collect our money.
Yeah.
So, it wasn't until I started digging into this how to be a DM, show that I think it might have been Wes Schneider who was talking about DMs, and he was like, "Oh my, you can," or, was talking about NPCs, and he was like, "You can use them for a host of other things. Like,
Oh, yeah.
they can propel the story. Like, you can just drop them in anytime, and
Mhm.
your characters are doing something you don't want them to do. Have an NPC come in and be like, "Hey, did you guys hear, like, the noise upstairs?
Yes.
Maybe you
Wow.
might wanna go up this staircase and check it out." Like,
Absolutely. There's a thousand different ways you can use NPCs and really help like create them to make your world more interesting and more believable. I think having fantastic conversations with NPCs is almost more telling for your world than like scenery or setting, because that's when people are used to having conversations with other people, and that's like the most natural thing I think for humans to do.
yeah.
So having these good conversations just really drives home a world that makes sense and your players want to be a part of.
So, I guess as a new dungeon master,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not even a dungeon master yet, so
but
I'm
you're
not even,
learning.
but I'm learning.
You will be
But I
soon.
maybe I do get very inspired from these conversations. But I know, like, oh, a lot of people who are new and are, just getting their feet wet with dungeon mastering might have the same question. I would feel like already I got enough to do with. I mean, I'm trying to get the story out there. I'm gonna have
Yeah.
some monsters coming in here. I can't possibly have to manage NPCs as well. But for a new dungeon master, I
Yeah.
feel like they can actually serve a great purpose. They can
Oh,
actually
yeah.
help you. In what ways could I use them?
Yeah, I mean, there are, of course, the classic ways you can use NPCs as quest givers to convey
Mhm.
information. But I also really like using NPCs as resources for the characters. So, something I really recommend for new dungeon masters, if you're going to be playing a campaign for a while, is setting up some kind of like home base in your game. So, maybe this is like a castle that like there are mercenary people there who can hand out quests to your characters, so the players may revisit this castle at this point, or like a friendly tavern that they know, it's sort of a cheers situation where everybody knows their name. They know like 5 NPCs who go to this tavern. So over the course of your campaign, you can come back and like revisit these places. You can have a safe place to rest or to get food, or to buy equipment. So I really love using NPCs in that way and having like a grounding quality to them or location. So I think that's something that's really good to do, especially when you're starting out. Just having NPCs that will show up again and again, because that helps, it helps train you to run NPCs effectively. If you're revisiting the same character and those characters are showing up again and again, it helps you fall into the voice. It helps you get used to running those conversations. And it really is a way to build your confidence and your players' confidence that there's some safe place or a safe person in the world.
Oh, that's nice. That is nice
Yeah.
when you put it that way.
Yeah.
So when you are running your games or even starting a campaign, do you have like a roster of NPCs you're going to pull out, or do you kind of create them on the fly?
Yeah, so usually when I'm sitting down, I'm gonna make a big campaign. I assign like names to people and places. I'm like, okay, yeah, there's a capital city. This person rules the capital. Here's their name. Go. And then I usually stop there until my players actually interact with these people. Most of the time, I find you discover a lot about the NPCs as you actually run them and as they interact with your characters, because your characters may never go to this capital city. So, don't confuse yourself by investing time and
Oh,
effort
that's
and
true.
learning the story of every single NPC. Start small. So, if you know they're going to start out in this tavern, start with your innkeeper. Who are they? Like, how do they communicate? And, roll on as you need to. I think the only real exception I have to that rule is if you have a villain that you're going to use for your campaign, and that villain is really going to drive the story and everything, I would invest a lot of time in them right from the get go, because that will kind of like guide your narrative journey in general. Um, but otherwise, start small, start easy. It is intimidating to remember 15 different personalities in your head.
Yes.
So do them one at a time.
So what does make them interesting?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot, and I'm always really, really grateful that I studied theater in college, because I
Okay.
think theater gave me a lot of tips and tricks about how to play interesting characters and how to make compelling and interesting people. And a lot of that always has to do. I remember so many professors saying this over and over again. Know your motivation. Know your
Right.
motivation. So even if it doesn't necessarily come up in the conversation, know what goals your NPCs are striving for. Um, know what they do when your characters go off screen. Like, keep these in mind, because what they ultimately want really helps inform how they interact with your players or what they do next. So you can start very simple. Again, like, let's go to this innkeeper. Maybe they're only running the inn because they want to buy a summer house. That's their whole thing. They want to buy a summer home.
Oh, interesting.
Like, if you keep that in mind, when they interact with the players, that can give you a lot about what they want. So maybe they aren't actually really interested in running an inn. One, that's a personality trait you could do. Two, maybe they just want money, because they want to get out of here as quickly as possible. So maybe they overcharge for everything, or like, maybe they ask the characters if they've seen any beautiful locations on their way. Just keeping this abstract like goal in the back of your mind automatically helps you know how to respond to a lot of questions, and get a conversation going.
That is very interesting. I
Mhm.
also studied theater in college. I didn't I did not take that away from anything. Um, I didn't guess I wasn't paying as much attention. But
Maybe I just had professors who really, really liked to say, "Know your motivation"
yes,
during
I remember,
scenes.
like, hearing that, but I guess applying it to, like, I mean, your character, to any character, you're right. I'm thinking of different motivations
Mhm.
for the innkeeper and how that would affect how they interact with the players.
And,
I
when
love
you're
that.
yeah, when you do feel like you have those motivations too firmly in hand, I think the next step is making sure that those motivations change and shift based on the interactions with your characters. So, say for example, I mean, your players burn down the inn for this innkeeper. The
Yes.
innkeeper's goal probably is going to shift from getting a summer home to maybe taking vengeance out on the characters who did this or getting another job. And then when you can maintain these arcs or these motivations, especially when they change and adapt off screen, it really makes the NPCs feel real and feel like real people in your world.
It does, it really does. So
Yeah.
how have you used NPCs in your campaigns in, like, other creative ways? Like, have they propelled the story? Have they changed the story for you because you discovered things about the NPC that's now kinda interesting and a new hook?
Yeah, absolutely. Something I really enjoy, especially when you get into higher levels of D&D, and you're like, your group is the big deal heroes in the world, right? They're running around, they're saving the world, they're doing all kinds of stuff. And at that point, they can't be everywhere at once. So if they can enlist NPCs to do some of the work for them or to, to have other agency in the world, that's a really great motivation to make friends with some NPCs and to build some relationships. So, if you do have like a rogue NPC that you interact with frequently, you know, making it open that your players could send them to go spy on something for you or to gather information for you. Or, you
Uh,
have access to a big deal wizard. Maybe he can hunt down magic items for your players off screen. Just making these NPCs resources, I think is a really great thing to do. That's kind of outside just give the
yeah.
quest or like
So
yeah.
if you were gonna do that, if you were gonna give them a rogue to go off and spy, would you actually roll for the rogue to see if they got the information, or would you just make it up in your head?
I think probably based on I'd take it case by case because if it is like a high level big deal NPC rogue, um, is it more interesting that they get the information? Is it more interesting that the rogue is like captured by the enemy and that becomes a big thing? Or I think playing the level of interest your players have in this NPC and the stakes they have and their health and safety can inform what happens next. I mean, it's always a really good idea to when your party decides to do something, so they decide to send this NPC into a dangerous situation, making it feel like consequences are real and that NPCs they care about are going into danger
Yeah.
is always a great strategy. So yeah, I would say play it case by case because if they are really invested in this character, I think it might be more interesting for your story if something goes wrong or something
Yeah.
happens to them.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I am thinking about some NPCs that have traveled around with us that we took a liking to, and we ended up we kill them. Right? I mean, we, like, just
Yeah.
put them in dangerous situations where they shouldn't and kind of now I'm God, that just came back to me. I feel really bad
Yeah.
about
I
that.
mean, those moments too, because when you do invest in your NPCs and your characters get to know them over time and you build a relationship, those relationships become such pivotal story moments. Like, if you're building, say, a best friend relationship with an NPC and say, a fight is going very, very badly for your characters and the NPC steps up and like will sacrifice themselves so you all
Oh,
can get away, or they'll come in at a pivotal moment. And while it is sort of a Deus ex machina, it's also like there are consequences to losing these NPCs, and all of that
definitely.
emotion and time you invested in that relationship becomes so much more meaningful when it's threatened or can potentially end.
for a while, I've always had this misconception that when an NPC joined our party, that it was kind of cheating.
Mm.
That was like, well, now we're not
Why are
really
you
doing
giving
this
us,
on it.
yeah, like
Why are you
a
like giving us help?
babysitter?
Yeah, like why are we? You don't think we can do this on our own? Like we just,
Mhm.
I didn't feel like we really accomplished the goal. Like I didn't feel as proud because I'm like, well, we had this guy that was with us that was helping us, but they're not. I mean, I guess I still kind of have that impression. Like I want to do it on my own. I don't want
Mhm.
this
Yeah,
NPC to travel along with us.
and I mean that's also a relationship that you can define. Not all relationships have to be positive. Like if there
Yeah.
is this paladin character who's following you all around and making sure you do good things, I mean, that's going to be a tense relationship with some characters in the party, and how that plays out is interesting drama for both your players and anyone who might be listening or watching your game.
Yeah, I mean, that's just gives you another story angle for
Hmm.
your character to play off of, especially if it's
Absolutely.
your character that doesn't like this person, but everyone else does.
Yeah, and I mean, it's always really interesting too, when you present the players with a new NPC, sometimes your players won't care. They won't care about this NPC. They don't have anything in common with them, and that's okay. This NPC can just stay with them for this adventure and then go away.
Yeah.
But inevitably, there will be those NPCs that something about them, sparks a player's imagination or a character's imagination. They find something in this NPC that's interesting, and want to build a relationship. And as a DM, I encourage you to invest more time in those relationships. If you introduce an NPC and your players don't seem excited about them, don't have them come back. you
Right.
know, Read the room, and develop the relationships that are really interesting to your players.
So, can you tell me about some of the NPCs that really resonated with your players?
Yeah, so in Venture Maidens, I did do the thing where we kind of have like a home base that our players go back to and visit. There's this mercenary organization called the Sisters of Sorrow. So all the agents and like the leaders who work in that organization and are sort of like the bosses for my players, they're all at this location. So whenever they go back there, they can spend some time with these people. I mean, we have like romantic relationships that have developed between some of these NPCs, all
Oh,
kinds of
wow.
stuff. Yeah. And one of the characters, I have to shout it out because people in chat are talking about it. We have the master of the house for this keep is named Vladimir, and he's just this very sort of creepy Ravenloft-esque butler who appears and sort of floats and disappears into the shadows. And over time, he's a very stalwart, sort of silent presence in the keep. But because the players have just want to know so much about him, he keeps popping up in the adventures. And like I love doing for Halloween episodes, he invited them to like go find an arcane tome from his ancestral home, and we got to hear a little bit more about how he might be from Barovia and all these
Oh,
things that
nice.
are like unwinding over the course of the adventure. Just because my players just needed to know so much that it grew from just like an interesting kind of, oh, he's a creepy butler, like, which is sort of an archetype you find in things. But his personality developed because they were so interested in it. So that's one of those examples when it's like when players get attached, that's the great jumping point to investigate that relationship more and to put more spark and energy into that.
Did you know they were gonna get that attached to him when you were
No,
thinking
I ever
that was surprised you too?
honestly, I mean, we've been playing this game for 4 years now. And what is still just mind blowing to me is how the relationships with the NPCs have changed over time. Like we had one of the bosses at the keep was sort of this snooty like cleric character who my players just hated. They just hated at the beginning of the campaign. And over time, they've come to love her so much and like include her in things. And like it's it's just so awesome to see how these relationships evolve. I mean, when you really invest that much in your NPCs, it does become like real life. Where people can not like each other and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden they're frenemies and then they're best friends, or because our relationships in life always change and shift. And so when that happens in D&D, they just feel so real and so special.
Yeah, and it is true because you don't know how the players will respond
Yeah,
and the
no, we
dynamics that
do.
are going to form. It is, yeah, it
Yeah.
is an interesting angle
It's
for
like,
to develop the story.
yeah, it's like in real life how, friendships and relationships evolve and change
Yeah.
organically. And when you can recreate that in your D&D games, it becomes so exciting.
Have you ever surprised your players with like the motivation of an NPC? Like, has an NPC ever just betrayed the party and you knew that they were going to do that?
Well, I can't, the campaign isn't over yet, but
We
um
don't know. We won't talk about what's going to happen,
yeah,
but
yeah. So, I mean, I one of my favorite things to do with my NPCs is never to give away the whole story. I love creating those situations, like in real life, where it's never clear who exactly you should trust or like who is right and who is wrong, because in life, people really aren't ever purely right or purely wrong. They all have different motivations and want different things out of the same situation. So when you do have a team of powerful characters, looking to advance their agenda, acknowledging that each of those agendas is different really, forces your characters to be like, okay, maybe I'll go with this NPC because I feel like I trust them because we have this similar characteristic, or this NPC has done this in the past, so maybe I won't trust them because they might do it again. So I love to throw wrenches in whenever somebody gets too comfortable, like in a relationship, and they think they know everything about this person, unveiling some new detail or some new layer, or putting them in a situation that really challenges what they think about that NPC can be just so fascinating.
and you don't think this is too much, like on top of everything else a dungeon master has to do?
What's really interesting is because when you get into your campaign and you have your setting like in place and you know your world really well, the things that move and change really are just your players and the NPCs. So
Oh
when
yeah,
you have your world built and it's all confirmed and kind of set in your mind, this really almost becomes the only thing you have to worry about, because these quests that the NPCs give you or these interactions they have inform so much of the story and move things along, that I think people fall into it a little bit easier than you might expect over time,
okay.
especially if you do have the same people reoccurring in your stories and really playing a part in your adventure.
So might be a dumb question, but as I'm thinking about it, when you are creating these NPCs, are you statting them up?
Sometimes I do.
Okay.
Like if I know they're going to be accompanying a character on an adventure, I will. Most of the time, though, if I don't need to, I don't.
Okay.
um and I'll sort of guide by like, oh, like, okay, this person probably is like the mage stat block, so if we do get into like a deception bluff arcana skill check, I'll just go ahead and go to the stat block and be like, this feels right,
Yeah.
to make the rolls. But again, like, you don't have to worry about the rules and the mechanics until you have to worry about the rules and the mechanics
Yeah.
with NPCs. So have something in mind maybe, um, but I think it's safe to play that one by ear.
So would they be like the same level as the party or different levels? Or
Again,
does
it's
it's up
it's
to you?
it's
It could be a
totally,
super powerful
yeah.
mage, or it
So
could be like a tiny little
yeah, and what's
just
what's
starting out.
fun too is like for my home base right now, these characters who give them the quests and are their bosses, they started at a much higher level than the adventuring party. But because of the nature of leveling, characters at low levels level very quickly as opposed to higher level characters. What's fun is over the course of your campaign, when your PCs start to become the same power level as your NPCs, they catch up to them in terms of leveling. And that really also is a big thing that changes in their relationship, because how you treat a wizard who's so much more powerful than you versus how you treat a wizard who's the same level as you, is
Yes.
another dynamic that shifts over the course of the game.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
I can see why your name was brought up as to talk about NPCs.
Oh, thank you.
And I was
I
seeing
love,
in
yeah, I love building interesting NPCs.
so when you design your adventures, are you you're building in these NPCs in the adventures?
Definitely.
Or
I mean, it's when you do design, writing in NPCs that are going to be helpful or interesting is always a challenge because you never know the party they're going to go to. So what I really find when you write an adventure is giving a good indication of what their motivation is already. So that way, you're doing the DM a favor when you hand off like this module you're writing, or and then giving them characteristics that are easy to act. So, saying like, oh, this person, they take lots of long pauses between their words, or, they're very thoughtful, or, they speak so fast. Building in things like that are really easy and accessible for anyone to look at and go, boom, I know how to play this character.
yeah,
It's just a
instant
nice,
personality.
yeah, instant personality. Because if they like raise at the end of their sentences every single time, like that gives you an idea of like what kind of personality you're dealing with, and I think it makes people just reading it on paper imagine and become automatically more comfortable playing these NPCs.
So do you mostly DM when you play, or are you a player as well?
Yeah, I've gotten to play a lot more recently, but I've been playing D&D for about, 10, 11, 12 years or so, and I would say 90% of the time I've been the dungeon master. So I am very grateful that I get to play a little bit more than I used to these
Yeah,
days.
what kind of characters do you create? Or do they have
Oh my
these
gosh.
very rich
Lots
backstories?
of I am that backstory player. I'm the one who will hand you the big two-page backstory.
I love it.
And my characters, I always, building in like weird hangups and little issues with them, that, so they're not automatically optimized, is I think something that I really I really like doing. So setting up challenges, I guess, for myself to role play along the way is something I really enjoy doing.
I love that. You know, I just thought of something else that an NPC could do, and I don't know if this was something that came up in an earlier conversation
Yeah.
or what, but a lot of things, a lot of I'm get concerned a lot with new players. Like if
Mm-hmm.
when I do try my hand at dungeon mastering, I feel
As you
like I
should.
want some new
Mhm.
players because I
Oh
think they
yeah.
would judge me less because they don't know. They don't know what they don't know.
Honestly,
But
I really like to have a mix,
yeah,
of players at my table. One or two people who are experienced and who can help you like manage,
yes,
rules questions,
without
and then
judgment.
yeah, and then new players are fantastic to have
Yes.
at your table.
But I would worry that maybe they wouldn't, like, some new players won't initially be comfortable with role playing or, asking questions, because when you tell people like you can do literally
Yeah,
anything,
and then they go,
then they're like, I don't know what to do. Like
yeah,
I can't think of it. But
but
I guess you could use
choice, yeah,
yeah, there's too much choice. The NPC could kind of gravitate towards that character and
yeah.
bring them out of their shell if they're being asked questions or being led a certain way or being told
Yeah.
information. Then
Absolutely. I think it's also really fun for new players to have a really silly NPC, or
yeah.
someone with a really strong but approachable personality. So like a sassy kobold, or just something that lets them know immediately that they don't have to take themselves too seriously, and this is a game about fun, and
Yeah.
you're inviting them to laugh and be creative when they see you laughing and being creative with your NPCs.
Yeah, you can really set the tone,
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, immediately with who, the players encounter.
Yeah, because I think, when you open up those rule books and you get a character sheet and you have those people who are like, okay, now you add 3 and 4 and 5, and it can be
Yeah.
really scary. But silly voices automatically let them know, oh man, this is jokes, this is telling jokes, this is having fun.
Yeah.
So it's a great signal for new players to just, relax and enjoy themselves.
It is, yeah, and if you have those players that they don't know what to do. They
Yeah.
don't know, like, it's your turn. Go on, new player, and they're like, I don't know if
I
I'm supposed to, like, pull out my sword or ask a question, then I suppose a friendly NPC could just gravitate and
Absolutely. Help
Tell
them
them.
out, answer
Help
questions
them.
in game, give them a sense of direction if they ever get lost. Sending the old knight looking to reclaim his glory along with you on the first game might be a great way
Yes.
to learn how to adventure, or better yet, how not to adventure.
Right.
If it
Yes.
is a silly NPC with your party.
Do you do voices for all your NPCs?
I do some voices. I'm not great at accents, unfortunately. I have a couple in there, but I do always try to note a vocal quality for each of mine. So, like I was saying before, if they stutter, or if they take a really long time to speak, or if they use a certain word a lot. So I try to put something like that in with each of my NPCs. In fact, I keep a spreadsheet
I
of
was
my
gonna ask, how do
NPC
you track them?
voices.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have a spreadsheet that lists all the campaign, NPCs that are likely to come up again, and I have little like notes about how to do their voices, so I don't get them mixed up,
Oh,
especially when the
interesting.
dreaded situation comes up when two NPCs are talking to each other. I
Right.
feel like just having a visual cue to keep in mind when they are discussing, so you can tell the difference, is super duper helpful.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
Um, you're very inspiring. And
Oh,
actually,
thank you.
people in the chat are saying the same thing.
Thank you all.
Yes, this has been enlightening. And I know that as a dungeon master, there's a lot of tips and tricks that you could
Oh yeah.
teach
Oh
a
yes.
new dungeon master or an aspiring dungeon master like myself. So perhaps you would be willing to come back and share more of that knowledge.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I do just want to say the biggest tip I have for
Yes.
anyone, just try it. Dive in and do it. You'll get better every time you DM. You fall into it. But the best place is to start, and it's never as scary as you think it's going to be.
Really?
It really, because once you get going, those first 10 minutes are terrifying right before you start the game. And then you're like, okay, it's the time to start. And I swear time will fly by for you. It will just fly by. It'll be over so fast, and you'll be so excited to play again.
We'll see.
I betcha. You'll
Uh,
have to try.
I will have to try. I will have to try. And I'm actually really excited about NPCs
Yes.
and using them. At first, I thought I would run a game completely devoid of them because I
Yeah.
don't want to have to worry about tracking anyone else. But um, I think that would be the wrong call.
I
They're
promise
definitely
they're here to
valuable.
help.
All right. All right. So before we started recording, you were saying that you've been very busy and
Yes.
which is great for all of us.
Yeah.
So where can people follow you, find you, learn about all these great projects that you're working on, maybe ask your advice about NPCs?
Absolutely. The best place to keep up with me is to follow me on Twitter at C Conowitch. There, I'm always posting what streams I'm doing, our schedule, what I'm working on. If you want to see the full catalog of things I've published, everything I'm working on, you can always check out my website, celesteconowitch.com. Otherwise, yeah, keep an eye out for me on the DMs Guild, always publishing stuff up there. And I would love to chat about D&D. It's my favorite thing. So
You
so
heard
just
it
throw them
here.
out there at C Conowitch.
Oh, that's awesome. You are awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Definitely would love to have you come back and we'll
Absolutely.
chat
Oh,
more.
yes. Thank you so much for having me. This has been an absolute delight.
Oh, thank you. It's been a delight for me too. I might go do a little quick LARP with my son right now and
Yay.
practice some NPCs on him. I
Absolutely.
guess that's what I do when I play with his stuffed animals and whatnot. I mean,
It's amazing how much imagination practice we all have at making up imaginary friends.
yeah.
And NPCs are just the same.
Yes. Yes. All right,
Yeah.
I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I love it.
Good.
All
Yes.
right. Thank you so much, Celeste. And thank you everyone in the chat and for sticking with us. And we will be back next week with more Dragon Talk. Until then, have a wonderful week, everyone.